I'll go ahead. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good very early morning, Jesse. It's great to be here. My name is Maria Sonnen, and I'm the Ethics Program Manager at BAE Systems, which is a international defense and aerospace company. And I'm here in lovely Southern New Hampshire. And I've been working, I've been engaged with IBAC for quite a few years and a judge for a few. And best of luck.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Mosinskis. I'm the Deputy Chief Information Officer for the California State University Office of the Chancellor. We're a 23 campus university system with 480,000 students. I've been working in IT and higher education for over 20 years now. Really excited to be here to chat with you today. Information technology and social media, I know, is a key platform for students and for people to communicate. I'm very interested in this topic as a technologist and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, also equally great to be here and very excited about this topic, as it is incredibly important for the world and for you guys going out into the world. My name is Jesse Ireland Smith. I'm a technologist, an entrepreneur, and an AI researcher. I've been running companies in Asia for the last 17 years. I also have a not-for-profit called AI for Good, and we do two things. We do research on the field of operationalizing ethics in AI development and deployment. We have a couple of papers coming out and in the next quarter that are quite relevant, actually, to what we're talking about today. And we do projects. And our projects, we work with our partners like Microsoft and Crayon Group, and we try to get them to large technology firms to invest in making the world better, primarily in conservation. So we use things like satellite, computer vision to track changes in forests here in Vietnam, but also around the world to try and aid on the ground conservation. I'm also a consultant for Crayon Group. I do enterprise data and AI, and a consultant for Ethical Intelligence, which is a ethics as a service company out of Europe and Silicon Valley. So that's me.
I think I'm next.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shivani Nag. I am joining from the Sacramento, California area. So Pacific time, it's right after lunch. Had myself a good lunch and a cup of coffee, so I'm ready to go. I am an alumni, so I actually was on your side of the table back in 2005, I think, or 6. And I love the competition so much that I continue to stay on as a judge ever since then. And my background is in organizational change management. I work as a management consultant in the public and private sectors. I'm doing that for the better part of maybe 15 or 16 years now. And I'm excited to meet all of you. Good luck with your presentation, and thanks so much for everything all the work that you put in.
Thank you.
I forgot to tell you what you now already know based on the ding, that we are being recorded. And the reason we're being recorded is that for future students who are interested in competing in IBAC, they have a rich chance to get an understanding of what you all are doing. And so that's why we record. So now it would be terrific to know a little bit about each of you. I'm terribly impressed that you represent all 4 grades, all 4 levels, and all 5 majors. I mean, you're wonderfully covering all the territory here. So we look forward to knowing a little more about you.
I'm Anders Larsen. I am class of 2023, so I'm technically a junior, and I'm very excited to be here.
I'm Kathleen McCarthy. I'm a senior English and theology double major. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm really excited too.
I'm Catherine Roberge. I'm a sophomore biology major with a forensics minor and a gender studies minor, and I'm very excited to be here as well. Thank you.
I'm Erin Doyle. I'm a freshman psychology major, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
I'm Natalie Bender. I'm a junior great books and music double major, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you here. Could you clarify for us, please, what you're calling yourself and confirm that, in fact, we are, whatever it was you said, the board of directors?
Yes, we are Social Solutions, which is an outside consulting firm, and you guys are the board of directors.
I forgot that you're so incredibly polished at the top with letterhead that says Social Solutions that I just blew right past that. And it's my fault for not picking up on it.
No problem.
So as you know, we have 25 minutes with a cushion of 5, and I'm going to hit the old phone. Are you all ready to start?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, give me a minute before I hit this. And when you start, I'll hit the button.
Okay. I'm here to try to.
Oh, yeah.
All right, there we are. To the board and management team of Twitter, thank you so much for hiring us to tackle the multidimensional issue of echo chambers within your platform. Although echo chambers are not a widely recognized phenomenon, these echo chambers are proving to continue to be a serious issue and must be addressed now. We are Social Solutions, a team of consultants that are prepared to lead social media platforms to realistic solutions for their ethical issues. Business to business, we understand that any sort of change will then occur financial and legal implications, and these implications will be addressed further into our presentation. Therefore, with no further delay, we present to you Twitter and the echo chamber effect, how and why Twitter should do something. Part 1, the problem. Social media websites functions on algorithms, and these algorithms are based on a user's interest. So naturally, these echo chambers occur, and they create this personalization and affirmation of one's views. And however, this is a gratifying experience, but it is indeed a damaging one. So to begin, we would like to present you with 3 definitions. What is an echo chamber itself? An echo chamber is an environment in which a person hears only information that confirms their own opinions and conforms to his or her own views. These echo chambers subject users to information that is repeatedly over and over again, only confirming their views and not allowing them to see the other side. Secondly, the damaging effect of the echo chamber would be confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to trust information that supports our own opinions. Confirmation bias influences people to ignore any other side of information and to accept their opinions as truth. And lastly, filter bubbles. Filter bubbles are the actual issue that are created by these echo chambers, and they're generated by algorithms. And Twitter, as you know, algorithms are created by looking at what you react to, how long you react to these things, and all of your friends and who are you following on Twitter. But why are echo chambers a problem? Firstly, echo chambers result in polarization. Echo chambers are created when these users become engulfed and are exposed to interactions amongst individuals who solely revolve around their interests, opinions, and views. Therefore, fostering conversations that are only based in their opinions and creating this sort of impenetrable bubble online. This phenomenon then creates a false sense of reality, creating this idea that most of society actually agrees with what you think with not considering the other side. Therefore, this is driving polarization in the greater society as a whole. And secondly, filter bubbles can actually and have been abused by spreaders of misinformation. When engulfed in these media posts that consistently reaffirm your views, you might not be able to actually see and understand the truth of your own side. When you're using that confirmation bias, you won't be able to understand the actual truth or allow yourself to. Therefore, we can reevaluate and ask ourselves several questions. Do echo chambers exist in real life? Do echo chambers exist in a sort of ideal world? Do echo chambers contribute to a good life? It is evident that in real life, echo chambers do exist, as humans naturally seek out people who are like them and like similar things. However, echo chambers, as detrimental as they are, would not exist in a sort of ideal world. If one could imagine an ideal world, it would be one where people can communicate with each other unbarred. It would be one that people can connect on all sorts of levels without these views contradicting themselves, and they would all be able to understand each other no matter their different opinions, their backgrounds, whatever it may be. Echo chambers on Twitter, specifically connecting the issue to Twitter. Algorithmic social media companies seem to favor this echo chamber effect. And we at Social Solutions understand this, as this is likely due to the revenue brought by user engagement. However, we'd like to point out that a recent study cited in the Proceedings of National Academy Sciences Journal suggests that on Twitter, fake news spreads faster than real news. This study is specifically showing how confirmation bias directly affects users specifically on Twitter. And this diagram here can show and exemplify this issue and the polarizing effects of the echo chamber. But to continue, we would like to propose a sort of objection that might influence Twitter to act. The objection that we would like to propose would be that echo chambers do occur in real life. People surround themselves with like-minded individuals. Why are echo chambers Twitter's problems? Shouldn't this be the individual's problem to avoid echo chambers? We would like to point out that Twitter is directly involved with the creation and continuation of these echo chambers. Definitely, an individual is responsible to him, herself, and the community to avoid these echo chambers. But however, Twitter is directly involved with the creation and continuation of these echo chambers. Therefore, they are obligated to do so. We would like to also point out your values, your public statements that directly contribute to the way that you supposedly say you would like to function. If Twitter is committed to an open exchange of information, information needs to be shared in a way that does not cut one off user from another. If Twitter is committed to a diversity of opinions, diverse opinions need to be shared. If Twitter is committed to a free and safe space to talk, users should be able to share their opinions freely with others. Then we come to the conclusion that echo chambers do not allow this sort of free exchange of information to occur. Therefore, Twitter is obligated to protect free, diverse user intercourse, inter-user discourse, to limit the formation of echo chambers to a reasonable degree. We understand that this issue cannot be immediately eliminated. So finally, to recap, on social media platforms, echo chambers do exist, and naturally, they are concentrated in social media platforms that are based in conversation, especially like Twitter. Secondly, the problem. Echo chambers create this polarization and further the spread of misinformation. And lastly, Twitter's role. As Twitter is directly involved with the continuation and the creation of these echo chambers, it is necessary that they act.
Okay, now we will be discussing the legal, financial, and ethical implications of adjusting Twitter's algorithm. So the current situation legally, cyberspace as a whole is largely unregulated by law. That's no secret. I'll pose this question to you. Is this advantageous? Is this a good thing? Recklessness, as we have seen in the last year, will lead likely to federal intervention. In a couple slides, we'll compare Twitter to a fellow social media company who is experiencing this right now, Facebook. So the First Amendment issues are among the most prominent in this conversation. An underlying purpose of the First Amendment is diversity of thought and a variety of ideas. These things are integral to free speech. So by eliminating or at least regulating echo chambers, the marketplace of ideas is better protected. So therefore, if Twitter takes the necessary steps to move away from echo chambers, free speech within the platform can be better achieved. And this is both in line with American ideals as well as Twitter's own mission. So to talk a little bit about Facebook, just last year, Frances Haugen, a former product manager at Facebook, accused the social media company of moral bankruptcy. She talked a lot about Facebook's disregard for responsibilities to users and their excessive focus on profit. And in the Senate hearing, she discussed the effects that Facebook's algorithms were having on children specifically. And Facebook, while objecting to these claims that she was making, they have halted, at least for now, the development of children's Instagram and other initiatives similar to that. Facebook's future, although Congress hasn't implemented any concrete restrictions yet, legal response and legal repercussions are possible for Facebook, if not very likely. So now I just want to talk a little bit about the Communications Decency Act. Section 230 of the Communications Act of 1934, enacted as part of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, concerns both providers and users of interactive computer services like social media. So this law prevents online providers and users from being held responsible for information spread by a third party, so users. And the Senate just last year started talking about reforming Section 230 to allow more responsibility to fall on social media sites for their user-generated content. Haugen's proposal is that social media sites should be held accountable for content which is algorithmically promoted. And the House's proposal is that social media sites should offer a way to use their sites in a way that is free from algorithms. So what does this have to do with Twitter? So if Twitter is proactive in regulating its own policies and algorithms, less outside regulation will be necessary. The best way to do this is to learn from the mistakes of other social media companies, namely Facebook. Facebook's primary mistake was failure to self-regulate. They had the studies that were showing them certain problems in their algorithms, and they chose to ignore them, and they had a big scandal because of it. So prudent self-regulation is key to avoiding both public scandal as well as undesired legal restrictions. So key takeaway, while continuing to make a profit, we're not hindering Twitter's ability to make a profit. Twitter should strive to regulate its policies, particularly policies regarding users, as judiciously as possible. So back to echo chambers. Echo chambers contribute to ideological division, both in cyberspace and in the real world. Echo chambers impede the ability of those trapped in these echo chambers to meaningfully contribute to both American and global conversations. So constantly producing echo chambers for users puts Twitter at risk of public criticism and consequently strict legal regulation. And so in the anticipation of change, the better the algorithms that Twitter can come up with, the less likely it is that government regulation will become necessary, or at least perceived as necessary. Okay. So just to conclude, in the interest of protecting free speech on the platform, in addition to the other legal considerations that I mentioned, it is in Twitter's best interest to minimize the echo chamber effect. Thank you.
All right, so now we're just going to briefly look over some financial considerations. So step one is asking, how does Twitter make money? Twitter engages in a number of activities that generate revenue, but by far the biggest source of revenue for Twitter is advertising services. It makes up almost 90% of all revenue they generate, as with most social media platforms. So we need to look at, how do Twitter ads work? The basics are, ads are presented to users based on information about the user that Twitter farms from both the user's activity on Twitter and other related applications and websites that Twitter has partnered with. Relevant information like which content you like, which creators you follow, etc., is fed to the algorithm, and the algorithm generates appropriate ads for users on Twitter. Twitter provides what is called pay-per-click advertising, which is basically that an advertiser pays a flat amount just to have their ad on Twitter, but each time a user interacts with the ad, clicking on it or something, then the advertiser pays an additional fee to Twitter per click. So, you might wonder, advertisers trust Twitter to get their ads to interested users, right? That's how this whole system works. If Twitter fails to do so, clients won't be interested in advertising on the platform. The difficulty is, if Twitter is going to generate revenue, it is imperative that the algorithm functions satisfactorily. So does this mean that Twitter has to create echo chambers for their users in order to get the right ads to the right people and make a profit? And to answer the question, I'm going to say no, but we need to take a closer look at how advertising actually works. The algorithms that Twitter uses perform separate tasks. So they have one algorithm, or perhaps even several algorithms for user content that the user views, such as content on the top tweets view. That's the view that you see right when you open up Twitter. And then another algorithm for generating ads for the user. So what this means is that Twitter can alter the top tweets view algorithm without affecting the ad algorithm. This seems to solve the problem, but there are still two possible problems. One is that echo chambers might form just through ad placement. It wouldn't be a full-on echo chamber like we were mentioning earlier, but it could be some kind of a miniature echo chamber that forms just through the way ads are presented. So if one user is only fed ads from, let's say, far right-wing media outlets, there will be some kind of remnant of an echo chamber left there still. Twitter has already taken steps to combat this kind of problem. They've banned political ads. We have a quote here that says, "We have made this decision based on our belief that political message reach should be earned, not bought." However, this only is true for ads that have to do with specific people or campaigns. It doesn't have to do with news content from news outlets. The second difficulty, which is perhaps the bigger difficulty, is that if Twitter does adjust the top tweets view in such a way as to try to break the echo chamber that users are in, they might end up driving away users. Users like to spend time on Twitter because it's a comfortable place to be, and breaking the echo chamber might cause a problem there. So, and obviously less time spent on Twitter from users means less exposure to ads, and the less advertisers will want to advertise on Twitter. So really this boils down to that users have an addiction to affirmation. I think everybody does. People like echo chambers because they like affirmation. Too much affirmation though, and not enough refutation or opposing views leads to a closed mind. And if you have enough of those, you're going to get a lot of division and strife between members of society, which is not something that Twitter should be aiming at. The problem here, though, is not a strictly financial problem. It does have financial repercussions, but the fundamental problem is not financial. It's an ethical issue. So we're just going to wrap up the financial section here real quick. Let's summarize. So the top tweets view algorithm can be adjusted without affecting the ad targeting algorithm. So reducing echo chambers will not directly affect Twitter's financial state. However, extra financial considerations show that financial problems may yet arise. And to properly address these, we have to proceed to an ethical analysis of the situation. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalie, my friend.
All right, so on to ethical considerations. Why are echo chambers an ethical issue? Well, Americans spend a lot of time on social media, and 72% of Americans used social media in 2021. 23% of Americans used Twitter in 2021. These users are using an average of 2 hours and 8 minutes per day on social media. That is a tremendous amount of time to be spent per day absorbing opinions. So social media platforms have a lot of influence. over what people think and over the public conversation. Everybody has a right to make informed decisions. You know, when you go to the doctor, or, you know, if you're trying to get somebody to agree to do a job for you, you will explain to them everything that's involved and make sure they have enough information to make an informed decision, so that when they say yes, they know what they're getting into. And that ultimately is the problem with echo chambers on social media, because in an echo chamber, certain ideas are selected and enhanced, and people will be surrounded by these ideas and not other ideas. So minority voices, alternative opinions, various other thoughts are completely submerged in, and people are surrounded by a bubble in which those ideas don't make it in. And so there's no free exchange of ideas, so there can be no really informed opinions or informed decisions. People end up just accepting the opinions of others without really getting to think through it themselves. And that is an ethical concern, because people have that right to make informed decisions. So Twitter has an ethical obligation to combat the echo chamber effect, because people do not have access to that information that they need to make informed decisions when they're inside of an echo chamber. So I think it's important to ask, what is the ideal here? What ideal are we shooting for when we consider the ethics of echo chambers? The best ideal that I think we can agree to is that everybody has easy access to a wide variety of opinions and ideas, and lots of credible information at their fingertips, regardless of the type of content that they typically like to view. So if a user tends to view, say far left content mostly, and they follow certain types of people, that shouldn't exclude them from having a wide variety of opinions at their fingertips and in their feed, so that they know that there's something outside of their echo chamber. I think we can all agree that people should be able to view whatever content they would like to see, but that they are aware that other content exists outside of that bubble that they're in. And this will help people be able to make informed decisions and have really well thought out reasons, and they will have ideas that they can really believe in, because they didn't just accept them on blind faith. And on the Healthy Conversation page of your website, you agree with this. You say, we want people on Twitter to have safe, inclusive, and authentic conversations. So who needs to be taken into account when we're considering ethical issues, or maybe changes that need to be made in your company? Well, your employees and stockholders rely on you to make a profit. So clearly any change that needs to be made with profit in mind. It's not the only consideration, but it is a big one, because you have responsibilities to these people, and also to advertisers. This is similar, this is a related group of people. Advertisers rely on you to bring the content that they want people to see onto the pages of people who will respond to it. So that is another group of people to consider, and also users, because as we've been saying, users deserve to have information at their fingertips that is diverse and credible. So what principles apply here? Well, you have a professed commitment to the open exchange of information that's on your website. And so holding yourself to that standard is a very important thing. It's a great goal, and it's something that we're here to help you strive towards. The cost and benefit of interventions obviously must be considered. Any benefit that would come from an intervention should outweigh the costs by far. And we have some solutions that we think will meet that requirement. The quality of Twitter's product is also super important. Twitter is a wonderfully user-friendly and very easy to use platform that people can spread ideas, and that's wonderful. And we don't want the quality of the user experience to go down in any way. We don't want your product to be less valuable to consumers. So to summarize ethical considerations, the ability to form one's own ideas is a basic human right. And to do that, one needs to have exposure to lots and lots of ideas, so that you can consider it and decide what do I agree with? What do I not agree with? That's everybody's right to be able to make their own decisions that way. But echo chambers, as we've seen, undermines this right. And it also undermines your goal to support open discussions, to have that open discourse. So Twitter needs to take action to limit the creation of echo chambers. But it's important to remember that all interventions need to be made with the good of everybody in mind, everybody that Twitter serves, employees, advertisers, stockholders, and consumers. The good of all of these groups is very important. It needs to be considered with any ethical solution. So with that, I will turn it over to Erin. She'll give us some solutions.
So we've come up with a two-part solution plan for you all. The first part is adjusting the algorithm. We propose that the top tweets view should be less personalized and rather than more personalized. Extending the follower to follower account chain would result in a broad variety of content generated for a user without exposing the user to radically distasteful or opposing views. This is the solution that Twitter should aim for. As shown in this diagram, the user is that person like closest to the bottom with the yellow hair, and the arrows pointing out are the people that user follows. The arrows pointing out from there are the people that the person who follows those people follows. And we're, with this follower to followed account chain, we're trying to connect the user to those followers of the followers in order to create more of a open bubble rather than getting rid of the bubble, because people do like personalized feed. So getting rid of the personalized feed isn't going to help, but expanding the bubble for the personalized feed will help. The second step is disclosure to users. There needs to be a better disclosure for the personalized algorithm and what an echo chamber is. And having it just in the terms of conditions isn't going to cut it because people usually don't read that. We are proposing that you guys use a pop-up agreement message explaining that what an echo chamber is and how this personalized feed is going to work in step one. Users are not going to be able to click out of it until a certain time goes up. So they're going to be forced to read it, even if it is like 30 seconds or just a minute. And this will help with better understanding of what an echo chamber is instead of just having it in the terms of conditions. So in conclusion, given the legal, financial, and ethical considerations of the problem of the echo chamber, we hope that our two solutions will be able to reduce this problem, which will maximize the user satisfaction over time and also your performance with Twitters in the social media space without giving up anything that you guys want to keep. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Jesse, do you want to lead off with the questions and then all the others can certainly follow after that?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. First of all, thank you for that incredibly informative and well-prepared presentation. You guys have done a fantastic job. And as the board of directors, you've given us a lot to think about. And you've presented us with some great, sort of reasoning for why you're presenting your solutions. I just have a few questions for you. The first one would be about obligation. You've mentioned that we have an obligation, and you say that we have an obligation to fix this echo chamber problem. But my understanding is that we are currently meeting all the potential regulations and policies that are applied to us. So I would say that we have an obligation to our stakeholders to ensure that we're maximizing wealth and maximizing their profits. So I'm just curious if you could explain exactly what our obligation is, again, towards this echo chamber problem, because, we have a clear terms and conditions like most companies. There are multiple different platforms. We're not the only platform that can be used. Our users, you have a process to go through, and we don't have an obligation necessarily to them to protect them from the connections that we make. We're a connecting platform. So can you just clarify what exactly is our obligation?
The obligation we're speaking about is an ethical problem. It's not a legal concern at this point. Although, as we showed with Facebook, sometimes things can get out of control. And if your reputation is damaged, if the public view your service as something that is not the quality that they're expecting, that can also harm your profits. But really, we're primarily speaking about an ethical obligation. Your customers are using this service to do conversations and interactions in their daily life, and they use your service as a real tool. And they are human beings with ideas and rights. And you have already shown that you are dedicated to more than just profit with all of the steps and policies that you have taken to combat hateful language and abusive speech and things like that. And so you've shown that you are dedicated to not only financial profit, but also doing good for your users, looking out for truly what is best for them as human beings. And so you have lots of policies about hateful language and going through tweets and making sure that that it's a safe space for everybody. And so we're suggesting that you continuing on this precedent that you have of regulating the speech to some extent, setting up some rules that people have to follow to post on your website. We're recommending that you expand and you add to your list of ethical considerations an effort to combat echo chambers, because we see this as an additional problem that's separate from hateful speech and things like that, abuse and things like that. So it's an additional ethical consideration that we think you should add to the list of things that you monitor. And so it's really an ethical obligation. And if followed, it should increase your reputation and credibility as a company. And so you won't run into legal or financial problems like some other companies such as Facebook have done.
Thank you very much for that. That's so in addition to the, business and legal obligations, you're saying that this is an ethical obligation, and thank you very much. Should I ask my other ones, or should I give everyone a chance first and then you can come back to me, Gail, if you want? Or
why don't we give everyone a chance and then we'll circle back to you first after
Sounds
everyone's done. Jump in, someone. We're an active board.
Yeah.
Nobody keeps their opinions to themselves. Come on. We're paying a fortune for this advice. Hurry up.
So I have a question. So I understand your what you just explained about kind of our ethical obligations. But do we know that this is actually something that our consumers even want? Is there a possibility that they actually like coming to Twitter versus Reddit or Facebook or whatever other forum they could be having conversations on? Is there a possibility that they're coming to us because they want to get information from like-minded people? So could that impact not just our advertisers, but actually our number of users, which would have another financial impact, right? So that's kind of, the first part of my question. And then my second part related is, why is this our responsibility? If people don't if people don't want to be in echo chambers, then, they can go sit in a coffee shop and talk to everyone in the coffee shop. So those are kind of my related questions. Thank you.
So it's true. What Anders mentioned about the addiction to affirmation, that is very true with people. And that's one of the big challenges, we admit, of trying to make a change in this way. However, the solution that we proposed about recommending content based not maybe on followers of followers, but followers of followers and their followers. So expanding that scope of what is recommended content. The idea is that maybe doing that would expand the content ideas a little bit. It would be a good first step to try to get people to see a little bit outside of their bubble, maybe grow the bubble a little. But we're not going to suggest that we start throwing random content, polar opposite of what people generally look at. This is nothing that's going to make people angry or frustrated. It really is just to grow their bubble a little bit. And some users may not notice, some users may appreciate it. Sometimes people get sick of reading the same thing over and over again. So we're not recommending something very extreme. But as far as it was mentioned that echo chambers cause a lot of division. And that is really something that on a social level is important to look at when you have the conversations of millions of people at your fingertips as you do. So for example, according to a 2020 poll, 89% of Trump supporters thought that the United States would suffer permanent harm if Biden was elected president, and 90% of Biden supporters thought the same if Trump was reelected. So we see this extreme polarization, and that is just nourished by echo chambers. And so taking moderate steps towards combating echo chambers will cause less division, even if it's a gradual process. Just by expanding that bubble a little, it shouldn't disrupt the user experience too dramatically, and it should lead to less polarization over time.
And if I could just add to that too, I think that you're probably right. A lot of people do probably like that feature of Twitter that they can go on and be with like-minded individuals, but we believe that our solution will be very enjoyable for the user anyway. And then also just with everything that we said about misinformation spreading so easily in the echo chamber, I don't think that anyone is looking for that when they go on Twitter. I don't think anyone wants to be misinformed. So this aids them as well. And then to your second question of, is this Twitter's responsibility? I think at the very least, transparency is Twitter's responsibility. I don't think the average user has any idea what goes into the algorithms or why they're seeing what they're seeing. So, and I know that they sign a user agreement, the terms of use, although normal people don't really read those, at least in their entirety. I think that Twitter can definitely, at the very least, make transparency, first and foremost in their mission to explain just a little bit more about what goes on behind the newsfeed organization and why people are seeing the content that they're seeing.
I'd like to add a little bit to the second point there. On your transparency page, Twitter transparency, right at the top, it says Twitter is committed to an open exchange of information. And we believe that the echo chamber is almost the exact antithesis of open exchange. It cuts people off from other people. And so by your own principles, you've committed yourself to reducing this effect.
Great, thank you. Maria, did you have another question?
No, please, Peter.
So thank you again to the team for your presentation. I really appreciate diving into, again, this complex topic. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the financial implications of what you're proposing. I think one of the things that was mentioned was that your proposal really wasn't a financial, I think it was mentioned that it wasn't as much of a financial issue what you're proposing, but you are proposing potentially changing parts of the algorithm and what that would take. So what I would really like to understand is what are the kinds of cost implications that you explored for coming up with this recommendation, and what would that mean in terms of if we decided to go with your solution, what that might cost, how long it might take, and then how sort of to follow up with that, how would we know that if we implemented it that we actually reduced echo chambers and that your proposal was successful?
just to clarify the question of what kind of costs are you talking about? Are you talking about the cost of actually changing the algorithm or costs that would come after changing the algorithm?
Well, I think sort of the combined aspect of it, of both, right? So what you're proposing is changing the algorithm. So there would be some work that would be required by Twitter to actually change the algorithm, and then understanding how what your plan would be to assess the impact of that change fiscally, because I think that is ultimately Twitter is it's a publicly held company, and we are responsible to our shareholders, and we are ultimately we are in the business of being a business and being profitable. So I just want to, as a member of the board, I just want to make sure that what's being proposed will still ultimately benefit Twitter financially, and again, understanding some of the what some of those components would be. How long potentially would it take to implement your changes, and what those sort of hard or soft costs might be.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I understand. So as far as the initial cost of actually changing the algorithm, Twitter is, as you may know, Twitter is constantly changing their algorithms. They're always working on it. So this wouldn't be anything drastically out of the ordinary, just as far as that goes. For consequent or later consequences for financial issues, it would, I do think it would take a long time to really figure out if this has affected Twitter. Just this past year, Twitter has had a terrible year financially. They actually had a net loss, I believe. So it would be hard to tell just within a year, right? But maybe over 10 years or something, you could see, is Twitter headed downhill or not? This isn't the kind of thing that you can really quickly turn around on, I don't think. But it isn't, neither is it the kind of thing that you want to force in there right away. I think this would be, our solution would be something you want to ease into, slowly expand the bubbles of people so as not to really alarm anyone. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yes, that is helpful. I think we'd really be interested in understanding the ways in more detail that you would, that we would ease our way into this kind of approach, and how we could validate whether the approach was making a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as slowly easing into it, the solution we propose is that currently the algorithm is set up to, among other things, it's set up to provide you with content from the people you follow, and maybe even the people who are followed by other followers of the people you follow. It's kind of difficult to explain, right? But if you have user 1 is following content creator 1, and user 2 is also following content creator 1, user 1 might get content from other content creators that user 2 has followed. And our idea is to expand that bubble. I know it's not just you're only receiving content from the people you follow. So there's already, it's not that tight of a bubble as it is, but we would like to extend the chain of user and follower kind of interaction. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, and this would be financially beneficial over time because we would just gain more user credibility that way, which would contribute to the longevity of Twitter. In the short term, I could foresee maybe we wouldn't get as much ad money from people who are looking to advertise to very specific audiences if we're widening those echo chambers a little bit. But over time, I think the public will be appreciative of Twitter's intervention in keeping a truthful, open space, and that over time will retain user engagement, which will bring in more revenue in the long run.
I'd like to just add one thing, if I may. Also, changing acceptable ad content is nothing new for you either. You have decided to not feature political ads on your site. And so that has implications, but you did it because it's more in line with your philosophy. You think political support should be earned, not bought. And so you have done things in the past that have put your ethical principles above the financials, and you earn a lot of respect from that from users, because I think people appreciate that you are trying to be a helpful service and not a biased service. So.
Great point. Thanks for that feedback. Go ahead, Shivani.
Thank you. I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you for taking the time to think through all these details and present a very concise and thorough presentation for us. I agree with all my colleagues on the board. I think all of their points are points that I was also thinking about as well. The last question that I have is more about kind of thinking outside the box and pushing the envelope a little bit around if, because you've done a lot of research. So fixing the terms and conditions box and having a bubble pop up might turn some people off, but I can buy that. Expanding the network, so that there's less groupthink and more input. I also like that idea. Is there anything else that you thought of that maybe you're not presenting to us that if we were to consider would put Twitter in a sort of like an ethical role model place in the industry? Because what's happening right now with Facebook is hot in the market, as you've seen, and there's a lot of this conversation going on. So any last out of the box thinking, creative ideas that you would like to sort of just throw out there for us to think about, in addition to these two recommendations that would put us in more of a role model place in the industry?
I think as far as thinking outside the box, this would be like an extra thing that you could sponsor, would be, sponsoring maybe a debate that Twitter users can follow or participate in, or just trying to bring people with different ideas together. So that could be either on Twitter, or it could be, sponsored in a different organization, but bringing people who would not normally speak to each other into dialogue. And that, I think that could be done very effectively and very respectfully. It would need to be moderated to make sure that people stayed respectful, but I think that could really expand people's thinking on topics, especially on controversial topics. Try to get voices in there that maybe represent the middle too, so that it's not just side one versus side two, but that there's actually multiple perspectives on the same issue. So debates, forums, things of that sort could be helpful. So that was the idea I had. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
Yeah, and I also just think this is our solution, so it's not quite what you're asking, but to not always be so personal, to not always take advantage of the most personalized algorithmic news feeds that we can get. I think Twitter would be a huge role model to take a step back from that and to just not manipulate those algorithms as much as most social media companies are right now. That would be taking a huge stand, and so that not everything you see is based on everything that you've liked. I think, just broadening what we see a little bit and not having everything have to be so personalized, I think that would be making a huge statement as a company.
To add on to that, I would like to say that in line with your values of transparency, and if you want to be this sort of role model company that makes the forefront opposed to all these other social media platforms, all these other competitors in the market, I think it would be very, very beneficial for Twitter to start a sort of initiative in the public forefront. Twitter has the ability and all the users and its fame and popularity to be able to make news outlets to create some sort of initiative that is transparent with its users, we saying something like, we understand that these sort of echo chambers exist in social media sites, but we want to be the social media that combats that. And we want to be that social media that spreads truth and combats misinformation. So I think a sort of like an initiative in the public view, not something that's sort of, not to say hidden, but I would say during our research of your company, we did find your mission statement a little hard to find. We were really searching through trying to find your values and things you held to be true, but it seemed a little hard for us to find that. And us as just researchers trying to find more about your company, and just the average user, I think they're blind to that sort of thing and they're not really interested in that sort of thing, searching and researching. So I think going straight to the public, some sort of news outlet, or making this initiative, making videos on online creation sites like YouTube would be very beneficial and could be another solution potentially.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate the trust building ideas. I think that'll go a long way. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jesse, do you want to ask some more questions?
Yeah, I can actually, Peter asked exactly the one I was going to ask about KPIs and financials, but I do have one related to the solution. It has been suggested that we possibly make our algorithm transparent and even open source by putting it on GitHub by some people. I just curious, maybe so our users can, kind of see how each post is being amplified specifically, maybe, adding more of a layer of transparency to that. My question to you is, what would your advice be on doing a radical change, like actually putting this, our algorithm in open source? And what effects do you think that would have on the echo chambers and also financially or business model?
So you're saying, we bring our algorithm to the public. If everyone knows exactly what it is, what the effect will have.
I mean, as you said specifically, one of our values is transparency, and this is the ultimate transparency that you could have, is actually make our algorithms transparent in a way that people can understand them. It's called explainability in some aspects. So our users are fully aware of how our posts are actually being amplified as an idea. And then to the extreme of this, even putting the code on an open source platform like GitHub, so that people can then give their feedback on how to improve the algorithm, sort of like crowdsourcing the minds of everyone on how to use the platform, because it is essentially we're big enough now that it is almost a public good in how many people use it. So this has been suggested. I'm just curious what your advice would be on something, a solution of that nature.
Definitely. I think that would certainly make users more informed, and more informed users will be perhaps less reluctant to use the site. So maybe a lot of people right now know that there are things that they don't know, and so they're not using Twitter because of that. And so maybe, knowledge of how the algorithms work would empower them to use the site, and more engagement obviously means more profit for Twitter. So I think that could be very beneficial to the company. And then I also think that people who are already using Twitter could also benefit from knowing what the algorithm is specifically, and they would be, better informed in how they approach their use on Twitter. So I think overall it would benefit Twitter by boosting user engagement.
I would like to add a little bit to that. I think most Twitter users are not capable of taking an open source algorithm and understanding that. It's just not a language that most people speak. And I think although putting that as open source and making it available to the public would certainly help some people, and those people could report to the plebeians, right? I don't think that would really solve the problem, because most people they're not looking for this. They're not able to read open source. I think the majority of your user base needs to kind of be taken by the hand, and not in a patriarchal way, but just they need to be helped along out of the echo chamber. I don't think the entire initiative can be, the responsibility for that can be laid on the user.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a question. How is it a human right for people to have credible information? That was what you said. When in fact, freedom of speech is a human right, there are lots of human rights, but how would you defend that credible information is a human right?
I would say it's not the information itself that makes it a right. It's the way that we see it, is that it is a right for people to make informed decisions, and to have informed opinions. It is not respectful to people to just give them a book, give them a book of opinions and say, this is how you're supposed to think about life. That's not respecting their intellect. That's not respecting their ability to think for themselves. And so it's the right of people to be able to form their own decisions and to believe them and to speak about them. And so it is not a right that is enshrined in the Bill of Rights, like free speech, but it is something that is part of respectful treatment of others, is giving them the right to make opinions and express them in a way that where people are like listening to them and can engage them in a thoughtful dialogue. And so having credible information is part of that process. So as much as possible, it is necessary to give people all of the facts that they will need to make their own opinions. And so that includes credible information and lots of opinions of people on every side. Like, for example, during the heart of the COVID pandemic, the CDC would publish guidelines and data for people to see, the actual data from a credible source. And that enabled everyone who read the information to be able to decide how is the best way for me to implement this in my daily life. And cities and towns all had to make that decision too. And so it's having that information that enables the informed decision making, because without it, you need to accept someone's opinion on faith, essentially. You can't understand the why, and you can't really make a decision yourself that's informed. And so that's why having credible information, it's not a right in itself, but it contributes to that right to make informed decisions.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions they want to ask before we go into the next phase? All right, thank you. This concludes our being in the role of the board that you're talking to, and it's us being us, talking to you about our feedback and what we think might be helpful to you as you present your 10-minute and your 90-second. The reason I asked the question is be careful with language when you do your 10 minutes on the ethical issues. I certainly agree that it's very important to have credible information. If you want to switch that into thinking about how you would want Twitter to be able to do more to disallow or whatever misinformation, that's one thing. But I think depending on who's listening, I think that it could be a stopper for someone, that you're talking about a right that they could argue back in their minds. It's up to people to figure out for themselves how to find out what the truth is. So it's a minor point, but it's just, as you talk about ethics tomorrow and you focus only on that, use your best examples and best way of explaining it. Does that make sense? In order not to create an unnecessary block in someone's mind that, you know, that isn't really a useful way to, you know, to frame something. I thought you had a great opening. I thought that you certainly did a prodigious amount of research. You clearly know a great number of things that were effective. I think it's difficult to do something with 5 people. And I think you managed to do that with grace, given the fact that the system wasn't set up for easy, the way it is in person. So you really acted like a team that was physically there, because obviously you are, but I mean, for us, it was like the old days of 2 years ago when we actually got to see everyone together. It was lovely. I may have some other things to say, but I want to open it up to the judges to share with you their feedback and suggestions.
Thank you.
I'm happy to go. And again, thank you. Very good presentation. One thing that I really loved about your presentation is how often you connected what you were proposing back to the Twitter's values, and the way that you did it in presenting it as a team, as a consultants, and speaking to us as the members of the board. Sort of, it was at least 3 or 4 times that you did that, and that's really, really powerful. I think that's you know, if for your presentations in the future, you know, continue to leverage that tactic. I think that goes a long way in meeting, I think, what the expectations were here. I did like how you presented this. You didn't present it in an adversary. There wasn't really kind of an adversarial tone. It was you know, a tone of a consultant that was trying to help us along, which was really good. A few other sort of pieces of feedback for improvement. Little bit text heavy in terms of the information that you're conveying. It seemed like there was maybe a little bit of reading. Some parts went a little bit fast. But I would say you know, again, some opportunity to think about how those aspects are addressed. And the question that I asked about sort of the implementation aspect, I think one opportunity for you to think about refining this further would be, how do you put something a little bit more tangible around what it would take to implement? So you started talking about, okay, here's the solution, you know, we're going to change a couple of these things, but as a board, you know, we want to know in more detail, how long is this going to take? How much is it going to cost? What is the organizational impact? I mean, what teams are going to be affected by this? And then ultimately, you know, what are those? How will we know that we were actually successful? How did we know that we achieved those outcomes once we implemented the solution? But you know, again, I thought you did a wonderful job, and again, especially driving that point around values home. I think that's such a that creating that tie-in. I think that's such a key aspect of making these kinds of presentations. So nice work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can go next. Yeah, I totally support what Peter said there, especially about the values. That's really powerful. That's one of the things that I had written too, and also what Gail said. I mean, you guys did a fantastic job of bringing everyone together and presenting as a team, and everyone participated. So I think you know, really well done in that. And I like, you know, some of the you know, as a technologist, some of the technical things you did separate the difference between echo chamber and filter bubble, which most people don't do. So like, just on a technical side, that was really great as well. I'll keep my feedback short. I'll just give you 2 things on that technical side. One, there's a couple terms that I think would be important. One is interpretability. So interpretability isn't the same as transparency. It's about what the business case is for making the algorithm explainable. So the business case can vary widely or in what is interpretable. And there's a lot of conversations around this right now in the field and in the research. So interpretability is about how the user, in the point that it's meaningful, can understand how the algorithm works. And that is a whole field of research right now that is gaining a lot of traction. And I think it would be really valuable for your solution. So it's not just, the extreme is putting this thing on open source and letting everyone sort of be able to see. But as you pointed out, they're not going to understand what that means necessarily, but they'll have access to the code and maybe over time be able to, certain parts of the population would be able to give advice. But there's also financial risks for us giving our code away, which I was kind of hinting at trying to get from you guys. Like, what is, what are we going to lose if we give our code to everyone? But yeah, so just interpretability is one term that I think that is important. The other term is agency. Agency is another really important factor in understanding how to solve this problem. And agency from an AI point of view is about what we give up in terms of our controls. So one solution that I think you could have presented is actually increasing that agency control. So as a user, we want to understand what we are giving up, but could be through clear terms and conditions, because you're right, nobody reads those, and in fact it's almost criminal that we allow that. But the agency is about having control over what is happening to your data, what is happening to your posts, and this is a huge issue with algorithms and artificial intelligence right now. And so this idea of having, of agency being taken away from us, and it's not necessarily nefarious. So we sign these, we click on these, terms and conditions, but there's the inferential data, there's all these other, algorithms are changing. And so we agree to give up future agency that we're not even aware of as these, technologies progress. So giving more control over agency, whether that be actual knobs and sort of things that you can actually say, I want these types of posts amplified. I want to expand my bubble by this, an actual sort of dashboard type of agency, I think would be another possible solution that wasn't brought up. And that's on the technical side, but I know you have to focus on the ethical side. So I would suggest going and reviewing some of the resources that you were given in terms of, I think it was do no harm and treat others appropriately, the intangible and tangible. And I would, for the 10-minute, I would say probably focus on the intangible, the fairness, equality, respect, dignity, and how it actually relates to those two slides. I think that's what probably some people will be looking for. Gail can add more to that because she's very experienced in that part of the second part of the presentation. But those are my thoughts. Well done, really well done. You guys did you should be proud as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Shivani.
Yes, I completely agree with everybody's feedback. I was actually going through my notes and I was like, oh, they said that, they said that, they said that. So I don't really have a lot of technical feedback to give you, but just a couple small presentation refinements that you could consider. There's a little bit of slide reading. And so I would do one of two things. I would either simplify your slides so that they're very quick bullet points, and then you're giving narrative that is already written on the slides. And that might actually help in a 10-minute presentation, right? Because you have limited time to do that. And then also for the slides themselves, I would try to change up the look and feel of them, because many of them had the 3 standard boxes that would drop through. And in the beginning, I really liked it. And then towards the middle, I was like, I hope the slides change a little. And so I think for standardization, that's great. But I think when you're trying to capture an audience's attention and you're trying to bring about different dynamic thoughts, make sure that you're using visuals to support that. And then I thought that the pacing was really good, especially given that there are 5 of you. I felt that all of you were very well spoken, not speaking super fast for the most part, which was great. And let's see, what else did I write that's different? Yeah, I also appreciated the tie into the values. That was very apparent and it was clear. And so I appreciate coming in from the front with that and then tying it in throughout the presentation. To me, it was clearly about ethics and also legal and other stuff, but it was, your main focus was ethics. And I think that was a really good to portray that. So good job overall. And thanks again for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maria, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I agree with everything that my fellow judges have to say, especially the tying with the values, A+. You guys were great, tough topic, but you guys did a great job. I think the only thing that I would maybe recommend is it seemed as if you kind of made an assumption that polarization is bad. And I'm not one to disagree. I think polarization is bad, but if you maybe even tomorrow, if you could even maybe expand a little bit on that, or maybe, tell a story about how polarization, neighbors don't talk to neighbors anymore, or whatever, make it a little bit more kind of emotional, so that people say, the board of directors that you're talking to tomorrow say, yeah, no, this polarization thing is a big problem and we want to be part of the solution. So that's my only kind of little bit of feedback beyond what my fellow judges have said, and maybe just something that you could throw in for tomorrow, because it can really bring more of an impact. But that's all I have. Great job, and great to see you guys are in person. Hopefully next year we'll all be in person. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What I'd like to do is ask you to consider for tomorrow a different mindset. The overwhelming amount of work I suspect that you did to put together the 30-minute presentation is powerful and wonderful. I have seen some people be able to pull off just delivering that in the 10 minutes, but what I've seen that is really more impactful is to kind of think through together tonight about what, if any of us have said anything that's useful, but also putting yourself in the role, understanding tomorrow the scenario, and I'm going to read it, but I'm sure you know it, but maybe it's more impactful now because you're getting ready to do it. You've been called back by the company that you gave your full presentation to for a second visit, and there is no need, nor is it in your best interest to talk about anything other than ethics, because these people have, even if it's a different person, in your mind, you're talking to the same board that you saw the day before. And so you're free to just really figure out how you want to package the power of the ideas and the impact you want to make through the ethical focus. You speak only about the ethical aspects of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles any ethical issues. You'll only have 10 minutes, and there isn't going to be any Q&A. You're not allowed to have slides. So I think we gave you some suggestions that are great for you in the future about slides and about some other things. But for tomorrow, it's just however many of you, how many of you are going to be doing the 10-minute? That's smart. That's very smart. Just focus on, you're really a consultant and you're really going into this situation where it matters greatly that you convey how they can change in order to serve their mission, their ethics, their whatever. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And yes. So you're using the wealth of what you've got and distilling it around this recognition that you're really doing this. because I suspect in a year or a couple of years, you will be doing it perhaps in a real setting. So enjoy stepping into that. And emotion is not bad, you know, I mean, the capacity to care about what you're saying and why it's so important, and having that convey to whoever you're presenting to, because tomorrow will be one person, but that person will still be the board in your mind. So picture, you know, all the faces you want to picture. I also think that it's really important for you to have tremendous confidence tomorrow, because you've obviously done a great deal of work. You obviously are really good at team. And so whoever isn't speaking is still going to be psychologically rooting and supporting for you as if they are. And so take advantage of that. I mean, I'm not saying that because of any weakness. I'm saying that because presence is a challenge. And when when you are doing something like this, it is really important psychologically to realize how supported you are as you're doing it, so that it makes it easy to do it without the personalization of discomfort. Make sense?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Is there any questions you want to ask us in our remaining time? You have some real experts here that, so please just, call out to the person that you have the question with, and I'm sure that they'd be delighted. No one's ever going to ask me any questions about technology, so, I won't feel offended.
I just have a couple of logistical questions regarding tomorrow. One, do we know what our time buffer is for the 10-minute presentation? Is it like 2 minutes or?
There's no time. There's no time buffer.
Okay. So is it anywhere under 10 minutes?
10 minutes. So you might want to, it's 10 minutes. So you might want to, in your rehearsing, you might want to make sure that you can deliver just under that.
Okay.
Because if the thing will go off at 10 and it doesn't disqualify you, but it means you can't say anything else after that. So if your main point hasn't been made yet, you won't be able to make it if the bell goes off.
Understood. And then on the schedule that we received for tomorrow, we're in the 9:45 to 11:15 slot. Is it in chronological order? So will we be the last team in that slot?
Not necessarily. What happens is the Uber judge, who will be the person, well, I am tired. Somebody who is an Uber judge today will be in each of the presentations, and they will be the person who gets to decide what the order is. So there's no order right now for anything. And some people may just follow the schedule. Some people may based on topic, they may want to arrange, something a little differently. I've been asked to make sure that somebody speaks last, because there won't be people from the university who can hear them then, so they want to do it that way. So I mean, there's any number of reasons why you can't know. I'm sorry right now, because everyone's going to handle it differently. I'm assuming.
Right, yeah. You guys have any questions?
No.
Please know what an amazing job you guys did. When did you start working on this?
About 2 months ago.
And has it been hard to do it in COVID?
Yeah, I mean, just having such a large group, finding times to meet and working with people's schedules, and logistically, that's been probably the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, we've been meeting separately a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But we're so grateful for all of you for taking the time to listen to our presentation, and thank you so much for all of your feedback. I'm really excited to take it for tomorrow and to come back. So thank you so much.
All good wishes.
You're welcome. Great job.
Thank you.